Welcome to a special edition of the Red and Gold Report, where we're going to be looking at the Chiefs' final 53-man roster that is coming together just today as the team has to get down to the league mandated roster number. Now, you would call it the final 53-man roster special, I guess, if you're a glass, half full kind of person. You would call it the roster cuts special if you were a glass half empty. Yes, there are going to be a few shocks of who made the team, and there are a few shocks of who got cut. And yes, I'm super pumped to talk about this roster now that we finally know who is going to be on it. And yes, of course, I know within a matter of hours, there are going to be other moves made, guys, in and off the roster, but I'm too excited not to get this out there and start talking about this roster. And we've got to start with the wide receivers. They've been a hot topic all offseason. Nothing different here. The intriguing thing is that the team is choosing to roll with five receivers. The Chiefs did, of course, cut former All-Pro Josh Gordon. I think I was on NFL.com a little ago, and like there was an article just on that, right? Like it was as if it was a headline. This got a lot of press, but it's not a surprise. Not a surprise to me. Last season, Gordon was targeted 14 times. He only hauled in 5 of those catches. That's not good, and the trend continued this preseason. So bye-bye Josh. Also not surprising was the cut of 2021 fifth-round draft pick Cornell Powell. He has now been waived for the second year in the row by the team that drafted him. Equally unsurprising was the release of former Browns first-round draft pick Corey Coleman, who he might be out of football at this point. But what was surprising, one of the most surprising, shocking moves that took place today was this. The team released wide receiver Daurice Fountain. Now, Fountain was the team's second leading wide receiver in the preseason. He's also a very strong special teams contributor. I was really pulling for the guy, and I think he's going to be missed on special teams. I really do. And he played great at receiver also in the preseason. And it just seems like he's a good guy. I mean, after he got cut, instead of putting out some frustrated tweet like a lot of players do, instead he actually put out this real positive tweet about Shane Buechele making the team and how much he likes Shane. Like that's some stand-up stuff, right? You gotta pull for Fountain, and I'm hoping he clears the waivers, makes it to the practice squad, and we've already seen some of these wide receivers are going to get nicked up here and there. He's probably going to be on and off the roster throughout the season as needed, or at least if he can claim waivers and make it to the practice squad. But all of those cuts mean the team is carrying just 5 wideouts: Smith-Schuster, Valdez Scantling, Hardman, Sky Moore, Justin Watson. If I can count, I can't count apparently, but that is 5. Watson, of course, was spectacular in the preseason, and he well deserved his roster spot. This is a really interesting group to me of wide receivers. There is no clear-cut number 1 here, but I think it's solid all the way 5 deep. And there's players with remarkably different skill sets and body types. And my question for opposing defenses is going to be, like, who do you focus on with these 5 guys? It was simple last year. I mean, cover Tyreek Hill and you're good, right? Because you have to force these other guys to make plays, and they were just okay at best. But this group is a lot more deep, with no one, just one key receiver, able to be shut down, and you shut out the group. So good luck defenses. Next is move on to running back, which is also fascinating. Only Jerion Ely and Tayon Fleet Davis were cut, meaning that Ronald Jones skid through the cuts by the skin of his teeth. That final preseason game was apparently just enough to make up for a really bad camp and first and second preseason tilts. And of course, the team also kept Michael Burton at fullback, though he was excused from practice recently for the birth of his daughter. Good job there, Burton. Now, if there's one position that worries me more than anything else on this Chiefs team right now, it's running back. Outside of some nice runs by Isaiah Pacheco in the preseason, this group just stank it up throughout the preseason. Right now, the depth chart puts Clyde Edwards-Helaire first string, Jerick McKinnon second string, Ronald Jones third string, and Isaiah Pacheco fourth. I just don't think that's good enough. And also, I don't think it's the right order. So why not go sign a recently released free agent? I don't know. None of these guys are superstars, but are you telling me Philip Lindsay, Marlon Mack, Kenyon Drake aren't better than one of those four guys that are currently on our roster at running back? And why not give Isaiah Pacheco a shot at the starting job? Certainly, he's looked better than any of the other guys in the preseason, right? So I'm a little concerned. Okay, I'm really concerned about the running backs. Moving on to offensive line, also really interesting what the Chiefs did here. The team let go of Caliendo, Gurman, and interestingly, Austin Ryder. Of course, we have Orlando Brown and Andrew Wiley returning at the starting tackle spots. We have Tooney, Humphrey, Smith returning inside as the starters. Now, the reason why Austin Ryder's release is interesting, though, is because that leaves the team with only one dedicated interior offensive lineman as a backup, and that be Nick Allegretti, which is probably why he got so much time at both guard and center during the preseason. He's going to be the first guy up at left guard, center, and right guard. After that, there isn't anyone else inside right now. I mean, Wiley has experience playing guard, but if he's starting at right tackle, is that who you really want to shift inside? But it also means that they're keeping three whole backup offensive tackles: Jerron Christian, Prince Wanago, and Darian Kennard. And of course, Lucas Niang is on the PUP again, right? And hey, you know what? I really like Jerron Christian. I like the signing in the offseason. I said it was a really under the radar win of that signing in free agency. He played really well in the preseason. Liked him. He looks smooth. I think he's a solid backup left tackle. So I love that he got a roster spot. But it also means the Chiefs are keeping three backups for the two tackle spots, but only one backup for three interior spots, which makes me wonder, why not shift Darian Kennard inside? I mean, you need another body in there, obviously. He did struggle, as I pointed out in the preseason. Really like his potential, but he struggled in pass sets on the outside at tackle. But he's a big, talented guy. He's physical. Why not try him at guard at this point? Now, offensive line was obviously vastly improved last season. It's a great group with some excellent players, but its one weak spot was right tackle, and with Andrew Wiley set to start there again, I don't see that changing as the weak spot in 2022. At quarterback, there's a guy named like Mahomes, I think is how you say it, that the Chiefs decided to keep on the roster, I guess. Chad Henne returns as the backup, of course. But what's super interesting about the quarterbacks is the team actually kept a third quarterback on the final 53. Now, usually there's just two. Why keep a third? That doesn't make sense. Why keep a third? He's not going to see the field. So why did they choose to keep Shane Buechele on the roster? Well, actually, it does make sense, and it's pretty simple. Everybody saw Shane play well during the preseason. That includes the other 31 teams in the league. He was probably not going to clear waivers if the team released him, if they waived him, right? Which tells us something very important and very intriguing if you're paying attention. It tells us that the Chiefs view Shane Buechele as the backup of the future. Why else would they be so worried about him not clearing waivers that they'd be willing to go give him a roster spot as the third quarterback? So sometimes you learn something, even if nothing happens, even if he didn't get cut, you learn something about what the Chiefs thought about Shane Buechele. Moving to tight end, Jordan Franks was cut. Also, Matt Bushman was waived with an injury designation, but I expect him to be brought back in some way. Meaning, with Blake Bell out for a few months to begin this season, well, Kelsey is going to be backed up by Noah Gray and Jody Fortson. Right now, at least on Chiefs.com, Gray is above Fortson on the depth chart, but in my opinion, and something to watch, well, I don't think that's going to last long. Fortson is just playing a better receiver, and I'm really excited about him for this season. Moving over to defense, I'm so intrigued with what the team is doing at defensive back. And it's kind of what I predicted. The team kept six, yes, I repeat, six different cornerbacks. Snead, McDuffie, Fitton to lead the group, of course. No surprises there. The Chiefs did indeed also keep veteran Chris Lamons. Lamons was in hot water, obviously, this offseason over some off-field violence. And I called for his release, but even I have to admit that he actually had a great preseason. And while his off-field antics might deserve a date with the judge, his on-field play did deserve a roster spot. DiCaprio Bootle got cut after a surprisingly rough preseason, which means that the final 2 of the 6 corner spots go to rookie Joshua Williams and rookie Jalen Watson. Now, here's my crystal ball prediction, okay? Based on what I saw on the field, I think Watson is going to jump over Williams on the depth chart, even though he was drafted in the 7th round and Williams in the 4th. Williams is very physically talented, but he's raw. He's developing, and I just thought Watson played better. But, of course, if you're filling up the cornerback meeting room, there's not going to be enough seats to go around in the safety meeting room, meaning the team is only going to be caring for safety. Zane Anderson, Devon Key, and even 7th round draft pick Nazeeh Johnson all got the axe, leaving 2nd round rookie Brian Cook and another under the radar free agent signing in Deon Bush to hold down the backup positions. Though one of those 2 guys is going to end up getting a ton of snaps because, well, Spags uses 3 safeties a lot, right? That brings us to the defensive line. At defensive tackle, everything makes sense. Dickerson, Shelton, Stallworth, they all got the old heave-ho, bye-bye. That leaves us with Jones and Nnadi starting and preseason standouts, Saunders and Wharton to provide relief. Good depth there, but Nnadi, oh man, I wish we could have found a different player to start in that position, but man, Saunders, Wharton, they played great in the preseason. I'm really excited about them adding depth to that position group. So that's all good as gravy. But the part that's a little harder to understand is, why did the team keep 6 defensive ends? So obviously you're going to keep George Karlaftis, unfortunately. Frank Clark, yeah, I'm still not a Frank Clark fan. Whatever, get over it. And you're obviously going to be keeping Carlos Dunlap. So that's 3, right? I get that. And obviously you're keeping Mike Dana to spell them, okay? He played well as a backup last year. That all makes sense. That's 4. But why keep both Malik Herring and Joshua Cain, though? Well, it actually only makes sense if at least 2 of the following 3 things are going on. It makes sense to keep 6 on the roster, 6 defensive ends, if Frank Clark is having ongoing stomach issues that are worse than the team is really telling us. It makes sense if Carlos Dunlap's injury is holding him back more than we know. And it could make sense if Herring is actually only on the roster because his oblique injury is worse than we know and he's about to head to injured reserve. Actually, that's kind of what I'm predicting, because outside of that, it doesn't make sense to keep Herring on the roster because he wasn't that great in the preseason. Keeping these 6 guys, it doesn't make sense, which is why it's telling me something else is going on that we don't know about yet. And I suspect at least 2 of those 3 things are going on. Moving on, apparently if you stuff your defensive end room full, you end up emptying your linebacker room because the team is only keeping 4 right now. But I think that's about to change. Elijah Lee, Jack Cochran, and Jermaine Carter all were given their walking papers. However, at the time of this video, it's being reported that Elijah Lee will be brought back after Blake Bell heads to IR, which would give them 5 linebackers. Also, I hope the team stashes Cochran away on the practice squad, as I think he played pretty well, particularly in the run game in the preseason. But like I brought up in an earlier video, I'm not surprised Jermaine Carter was cut. I actually thought that this would be a good move to cut him. I mean, the team was really happy to sign him in free agency, coming over from Carolina in the offseason, but he didn't look good. Like, he looked slow and lost in the preseason, which is not a good combo most of the time. And all of that leaves us with just 4 linebackers right now, but I think Lee is coming back. Obviously, we got Willie Gay, Nick Bolton, the young, exciting, amazing, athletic starting pair for the Chiefs. But what this preseason really got me excited about is the depth at linebacker. 3rd round rookie Leo Chanel, obviously. He's strong, tough, plays like a wild man. Loved him in the preseason. But Darius Harris, I mean, that guy to me was maybe the biggest surprise of the preseason. He looked great in the preseason. Really good. And and like I said, I believe Lee is going to be back to provide that fifth linebacker spot. So I'm really comfortable with the depth at linebacker. Okay, so those are all the position looks. Of course, a lot of this is still changing. It's going to be in flux in the days ahead. We'll have to keep up with it. But overall, here are a few of my big thoughts. I like the depth at wide receiver. But I am a bit bummed Fountain didn't make the squad. I like Fountain, but I think that had less to do with Fountain and more to do with the team thinking that Shane Buechele would be claimed if they cut him, and not thinking they could keep both six wide receivers and three quarterbacks. And I think the team probably figured that Fountain will not be claimed on waivers, seeing as how well he wasn't claimed last year when he was on the practice squad all year round, right? So I think it was a little bit of strategery by the team to think, okay, is Shane Buechele or Darius Fountain more likely to get picked up on waivers? And they thought, oh, I think the way Shane played in the preseason, he will, so we'll have to waive Fountain, hope he makes it to the practice squad. So that's interesting there. I think, another thought, that we discovered that the Chiefs view Shane Buechele as the future backup quarterback. Why else are they carrying him on the roster? I think I'm worried about the running backs. I hope we bring in a free agent, and I really hope Isaiah Pacheco has a chance to start. I mean, I just don't think the current depth chart at running back is going to cut it. I'm also worried about right tackle, but I still think our offensive line is going to be one of the truly great ones in the league again this year. I think it's funny, but understandable why we're keeping six corners, particularly after how many we drafted, but only four safeties. I think it's odd that the team kept six defensive ends. But I think something else is probably going on there that we don't quite know about. I'm thinking we have better depth at linebacker than we have for several seasons now. I'm excited about those guys. I think it's also interesting that the team is keeping 9 of its 10 draft picks. That's a win. Gosh, 9 drafted players, 9 drafted rookies making the roster. That's great. You're doing something right in the draft, right? But what do you think? What do you think of all this? Who's the player that you are surprised got kept? Who was the player you were surprised got cut? What are some moves you think the Chiefs are going to still make? If there's one position that you could still improve, what would it be? Let me know all that in the comments below. Thank you for watching the Red and Gold Report, and go Chiefs!